Hey y'all, welcome to a new week of What's for Dinner. I've got 5 simple, budget-friendly, delicious meals throughout this video. And first up, I want to share with y'all some of the absolute best chicken thighs I've ever made. These are going to cook up so perfectly, and they are going to have the most amazing, unique flavor that I just know y'all will love. And if you are into meal prep, I highly recommend adding these to your list because they reheat just as good. So for my size family, I'm doing 8 boneless, skinless chicken thighs. I've laid those out butterfly style. And this right here is the key ingredient, the Better Than Bouillon roasted garlic base. I found this recipe on TikTok a while back, and as soon as she whipped out that jar, I knew immediately that I had to make it. So I will definitely link the original video in my description box for y'all to go and watch. But I use about 2 heaping tablespoons of that garlic base. I did about a tablespoon of honey, and I'd say about a tablespoon and a half of some olive oil. Those measurements doesn't have to be perfect. She didn't measure, and I didn't really measure either, so I just stirred that together really good. I'm putting all of that over top of my chicken. I use a casserole dish for mine. This is about an 8x8 casserole dish. I sprayed it with some cooking spray, but you can also do a cookie sheet if you want to. I went in with my hands to spread that into an even, thin layer. And then you got to keep in mind that roasted garlic base does have a lot of sodium in it, but chicken still needs a little bit of salt, but just go very light-handed. I use pink Himalayan salt, but any salt will be fine. And I'm going heavy-handed with the black pepper because we are a pepper-loving family. And then lastly, I'm going to hit it with some smoked paprika, and it pairs so perfectly with these flavors. So good. I'm going to pop that in the oven at 400 degrees for 35 minutes, and that is all there is to it. Here's what they come out looking like, and all of those juices in the bottom of the dish, you do not want to just get rid of that. It is so flavorful. You could spoon some over some like cooked baked veggies, or you can do like I did, and I spooned a little bit of that over some roasted chicken rice. Here's what that package looks like. This was actually my first time buying this one, and it was super good. I would most definitely repurchase that. And we just paired it with a side of peas, and we all just really, really enjoyed this meal. I say it all the time, but it just seems like the most simplest meals are the best. Probably because it's harder to mess up, but we have always been a big chicken and rice loving family, and this is just another one to add to that list. It definitely ranks super high up there. It's a recipe I always want to have in my back pocket because it's just that good. Next up, I'm going to be trying out some chili pot pies. This is one of those recipes that I knew would be good, but it just blew us away. Like, it definitely exceeded our expectations. Very easy, perfect for those busy nights, and we now have a new family favorite. So I started by browning up a pound of ground beef. I typically like to season mine with salt, pepper, onion, and garlic powder. Once I get that added, I just continue browning it until it's done, and then I drain off the grease. Now to that, I'm going to be adding in 2 8-ounce cans of some tomato sauce. You'll also need a can of chili beans. This is just a normal size can, and I really like the Bush's chili beans. I notice anytime I use those over others, we just like it better, and I use juices and all. And you'll need a package of chili seasoning. Now, I really love the French's Chilio seasoning. If you watch my older videos, you know that, but I have not been able to find it. I really hope they didn't discontinue it, but I used the McCormick this time, and we really liked it also. I would definitely repurchase it. So I'm just going to let that simmer for about 10 minutes with the lid on. And then the recipe that I'm going to include in the description box does call for a homemade cornbread mix. I decided to just whip out a box of Jiffy. So it's just 1 box of that, a 1/3 cup of milk, and 1 egg. And I'm just going to take my whisk, going to mix that together really good until it's mostly lump free. That's all there is to that. So now I can start assembling everything. Here's that chili. It's nice and thick. Chili does not have to be difficult to be good. So I am going to be serving this in like little individual portions. So I pulled out 4 of my ramekins, as I call it. They're all of various sizes, as you can see. If anyone cares, that orange one is for Josh, the red one is for me, Boston's got the blue one, and Riley has the white one. It all kind of goes off of our appetite. I know my family well. And you don't have to do this in individual portions if you don't want to. You can definitely make this into a casserole. It will taste the same. And I did spray my ramekins with some cooking spray first. I just wanted to make sure that my cornbread wouldn't stick to it. So I'm just adding about a half a cup of that cornbread mix to each bowl. I do have my oven preheated to 375 degrees. As you can see, I have them all on a cookie sheet just in case anything wants to spill over. And I actually did have one of them that did. So I baked that for about 20 to 25 minutes. It just depends on your oven. And then I did place them all on a saucer. If you are serving this to kids, make sure to tell them that the bowls are going to be really hot and not to touch them. I did a sour cream and cheese for Josh and I on top of the cornbread, and the kids just wanted shredded cheese on top of theirs. So I'm going to break into this for y'all and show y'all the absolute perfect bite. I'm telling y'all, these are so delicious. Everyone cleaned their bowls, and it's just so cozy and cute. It is the absolute perfect wintertime meal. On this night, we're going to be doing a one-pot meal. So I'm going to be making a cheeseburger gnocchi skillet. So I've had this package of gnocchi staring at me in the pantry for a while now. It was getting close to its expiration date. So that was kind of my inspiration for wanting to make this. I don't have that many gnocchi recipes, so this one caught my eye. So I started by melting about a tablespoon of butter. I threw in that whole package of gnocchi, and I just sauteed that for a few minutes to kind of toast it up, give it just a little bit of color, and then I'm just removing that to a separate bowl, and I'm going to set that to the side. So to that same hot skillet, I'm going to throw in a pound of ground beef. The original recipe only called for a half a pound of ground beef, but I have learned that 1 pound is the perfect amount for my family of 4, so that's what I'm doing. I'm getting that chopped up real good, and then I'm going to go in and season it with some salt and black pepper, onion powder, and we're going to do some smoked paprika. This is a spice I don't use all that often, but what do you know? I've used it twice in this video. I'm also going to do a teaspoon of cumin and a teaspoon of ground mustard. I thought the cumin was a little bit random to be in like a cheeseburger dish, but in the end, it really did all work out. So I'm just going to continue cooking the beef. There wasn't a lot of grease on that meat, so I didn't even worry about draining it. And the original recipe does call for a can of rotel. My grocery store only had the original rotel, and I have learned that's too spicy for my family. We only do the mild, so I decided to just do a regular can of diced tomatoes. I also did a cup of beef broth, and I kind of messed up here. Not really, but I wanted to add a lot of fresh garlic to this recipe. I should have sauteed it with the beef and seasonings, but I did it earlier. I set it to the side, and I almost forgot about it, so luckily I didn't. So I just went ahead and threw it on in there with the beef broth and tomatoes, and then once that started to come up to a simmer, I went ahead and added that gnocchi back in because it's not fully cooked through yet. I just kind of toasted it. It needs to get tender, so I brought that up to a boil, added a lid, turned the heat down a bit, and I'm going to let that simmer for about 5 minutes. So in that time, I shredded up a block of sharp cheddar cheese, and here we are after about 5 minutes, and this is a little bit too much liquid for what I am looking for. That's probably because I didn't use a rotel, and the cans of diced tomatoes have a little bit more tomato juice in them. So what I did is I just turned my heat up. I let that cook on a high heat for just a couple of minutes just to try and evaporate some of that liquid, and it worked. Once I start stirring this, you will see that it thickened up perfectly. This is exactly what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my heat, and I'm going to add in about a half a cup of that shredded cheese as well as about a 1/4 cup of that heavy cream, and I'm going to stir all of that together. I want to heat up the heavy cream, and I want my cheese to melt. So for the final step, I'm going to add about another half a cup of that shredded cheese all over the top, and it calls for this to be put underneath the broiler in the oven to get the cheese like nice and golden brown. But I decided to skip that step. I just added my lid back on and let it sit for a few minutes to melt. And here is the finished product. It kind of resembles like a hamburger helper, except it's got a ton more flavor and it's using gnocchi instead of like a typical pasta. Now this is optional, but we wanted to add some toppings to ours. So I fried up some bacon and I'm just crumbling that over the top. And I also figured some dill pickles would go good with it, so I just chopped some up and we paired it with some garlic Texas toast. This was another dish that we thought just had unique flavors to it, just something different, and everyone cleaned their bowls once again. On this night, I'm going to be trying out a new baked pork chop recipe. My kids really love pork chops, like probably more than any other type of meat. So I am always on the hunt for new pork chop recipes. So as you can see, I have 4 laid out here. They are pretty good size because they are bone in. You can most definitely do this with boneless pork chops. I would do that if I had those on hand, but recently Kroger had a really good sale on their bone-in pork chops, so my freezer is full of them. So I'm just wanting to start going through those, and I'm going to be seasoning both sides with some garlic powder, Lawry's seasoned salt, and some black pepper. Feel free to season those up however you like. So we are going to be breading these pork chops, and then they're going to be coated in like a gravy and baked. So I'm getting my little breading station set up. So we got 1 egg in here that I am whisking up. In a separate bowl, I'm adding a little bit of just some plain all-purpose flour. And then in the third and final bowl, I'm going to go in with some Italian-style breadcrumbs. And I'm just eyeballing those measurements just so it's enough to coat 4 pork chops. So now we can go ahead and start breading these up. I'm going to start by rolling these around in that flour, shaking off the excess, and then it's going to go straight into the egg. Same thing, let all of that excess drip off, and then finally, you can roll it around in the Italian-style breadcrumbs. I'm going to make sure it's coated really good. I'm going to make sure that every inch of that is fully coated. So over on the side, I had a little bit of olive oil heating up in my skillet. Once that was nice and hot, I just went on ahead and dropped in my pork chops. I'm only going to cook those 2 at a time. I don't want to overcrowd the pan. And I am not looking to cook these all the way through. I'm just wanting to get that crust like golden brown and, make it set and everything so it don't just completely dissolve and fall apart. I only did those for a few minutes on each side, got those took out of the pan, and now we're going to need to cook up the last 2. So I did have to add in a little bit more olive oil since that first batch kind of soaked it all up. And same thing, just getting that golden brown crust on each side. So I did add those to a 9x13 casserole dish, and then we're going to start working on the sauce, gravy, whatever you want to call it. So I am using 1 can of a cream of mushroom soup. I know that a lot of people don't like this, so you can substitute it with cream of chicken or even cream of celery. I used to never cook with cream of mushroom soup. I've only recently became comfortable with it. Recently, we went to Louisville, Kentucky with a couple of friends for a concert, and beforehand we ate at the Old Spaghetti Factory, and a friend had me try a cooked mushroom, and I actually liked it, so it kind of gave me the confidence to start wanting to use it more. But to that, I added a 1/2 cup of milk, and it calls for a 1/3 cup of white wine. I would have added that, but I had that leftover beef broth from the Cheeseburger Gnocchi skillet, so I wanted to use that up, and I thought it would pair well with it, which it did. So I just whisked all that together until it was mostly smooth, and I'm just going to pour that all over the top of my pork chops. I'm going to get it covered tightly with some heavy duty foil, and it's going to go in the oven at 350 degrees for 1 hour. Now the recipe that I'm going to attach in the description box calls for 1.5 hour cook time, an hour without the sauce, and then 30 minutes with the sauce. I just thought that would be way too long. So that's what I did, and I thought it worked out perfectly. I know it's not the most beautiful dish, but it is so amazingly good. I paired it with some green beans and some homemade mashed potatoes where I poured plenty of that sauce from the pan over the top of it, and I heated up some King's Hawaiian rolls and topped it with butter, and it was a dang good dinner. All of these flavors reminded me of a little mini holiday plate. So I say with Thanksgiving coming up, if you don't feel like going all out, you only have a few people to feed, and maybe you're not a big turkey or ham fan, I say this would be a really great option. I've had this 1/2 box of lasagna noodles in my pantry for a while, as well as a can of spaghetti sauce and then some shredded Parmesan cheese in my fridge that all really needed to be used up. So I decided to make some spinach lasagna roll-ups. I'm pretty sure I've made this before. I've definitely done other versions of it with like manicotti, the jumbo shells. It's just always a dish that we really like. So I just simply cook those noodles up in some salted water, going by the box directions, and then drain them. And then for the most important part, we're going to work on the filling. So that's just a 15-ounce container of some ricotta cheese. You need a half a cup of Parmesan. This is probably a little more than that. And you can definitely use the kind in the bottle if you want to. Again, I just wanted to use up that shredded one that I had. You'll also need some frozen spinach. Just make sure to thaw it out and squeeze out all the excess moisture. I cracked in 1 egg, and then lastly, I'm just going to season this up really well with some garlic salt and some black pepper. Feel free to add more if you want. I know Italian seasoning would go really good in this. For most people's taste, but I've never really been a huge fan of Italian seasoning. It works in some things, but it's not something I like in a ricotta filling, I have come to realize. So I just started that together really good, and I laid out those lasagna noodles on a big old piece of wax paper. You want to make sure that your noodles are dry before you start working with them so that this mixture doesn't just slide completely off, but I have found that they just kind of naturally dry out themselves. Didn't have to do anything special to them. And I just dumped all of that ricotta mixture on those. And I'm just taking the back of my spoon and smoothing it out into an even layer. And then I'm just going to simply take them one by one and start rolling them up. This process should go by pretty quickly. And then you're going to grab your favorite casserole dish and your favorite type of spaghetti sauce. This is the one that I was wanting to use up. So I just added a little bit of that to the bottom. I'm giving it the old swirl around instead of dirtying up a spoon to spread that out. And then I'm just going to take the lasagna rolls and put them seam side down into that sauce. Otherwise, they would all just kind of unroll. But I'm just going to continue doing that, and then I'm going to take the rest of that sauce and I'm just going to drizzle it over each one of those. I'm just going to use that whole can. And then I'm going to pull out my shredded mozzarella cheese, and I'm just going to add a little bit to each one. Use as little or as much cheese as you want to. And it doesn't have to be mozzarella. I know it's typical with lasagna, but do what you want. But this Argento one is really good. I got it on sale recently, and I have been loving it. But I'm going to cover this with some tin foil, and I baked it at 350 for 40 minutes. You'll know it's done when the cheese is all nice and melted on top and everything's kind of bubbling up. I think that is beautiful, and to go along with it, I am happy to announce that we officially have a Costco membership. I've been about 3 times now, and I absolutely love it. I got the famous chicken skewers that I hear everyone talk about. We used half for a quick lunch to try them out, and I knew that I wanted to save the other half for a salad. So the night finally came. So I prefer cutting up my own iceberg lettuce and washing it and all that, compared to like the bag salad mix. I just think it tastes so much better. I also chopped up some tomatoes and cucumbers. I shredded some sharp cheddar cheese. We've got a ranch and croutons. I did heat up that chicken in the oven, and I found some ciabatta rolls in the back of my freezer, so I thawed those out, topped them with butter and garlic salt, and baked those. I could have got those a little bit more brown on top, but everyone was hungry and didn't want to wait any longer. So here's my plate. I have 2 of those spinach lasagna rolls, a piece of the garlic bread, and my favorite thing on this entire plate was that salad with the chicken. I have just been craving it, and it was just the perfect salad. I would have been happy with just that, but I was also really happy to use up all those other ingredients that I've been meaning to, and it made for great leftovers, so it was a win-win. But that's all I got for y'all in today's video. I really hope that this was helpful with your meal planning. If you made it this far in the video, I want to thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great rest of your week. I will see y'all in the next one.